You okay? You done? Good. Right, fine. Good morning again, formally, everyone. Do we have any apologies?
None, Chairman.
Okay, I did have a message just a few minutes ago from Councillor Hussain saying he was delayed and would be 10 to 15 minutes late. And we move on to the minutes of our last meeting and questions on that, questions as to accuracy only. All good. We're happy to approve the minutes. Great. Thank you. Item 3, matters arising from that meeting. There is one matter to report on, and that was I can give you a verbal update on the questions around the safety centre and Azhar Ali. We agreed that the Democratic Services Officer advised that we would allow the new CEO at the safety centre time to settle in, but that we'll arrange a meeting at the Blue Light Hub, West Ashland, as far as we're concerned, and that time we'll visit the safety centre, but that looks like it'll be early 2026 to allow that new CEO to settle in. And also the report to the Fire Authority meeting in October will bring a report on the safety centre funding agreement to the authority, and that'll be the 8th of October. That meeting. So, are there any other matters arising? Bring up. No, thank you. Any disclosures of interest beyond what's in your statutory declarations? Do we have any questions in accordance with Standing Order SOA 7?
None, Chairman.
Thank you, Katie. Move straight on then to the budget monitoring report, which Asif is going to deliver for us. Morning, Asif.
Good morning, members. Thank you. Presenting the budget monitoring report for the first few months of the financial year, providing the projected outcome position as at the end of July. You'll notice a significant change in the format of this report compared to the previous versions. I just want to state this is intentional. We redesigned it to focus on the key components of the budget, which are employee costs and non-employee costs, which include supplies, services, premises and transport. This new format aims to provide greater clarity on where the most significant variances are occurring. We're starting with the headline figures. For 25-26, we set a budget of 43,989,000. And the forecast outcome is 42,760,000, resulting in a projected underspend of 229,000. This underspend is largely driven by higher than expected investment returns. However, it's important to note that following the budget setting process, funding forecast had to be revised down by just over £200,000. This reduction was mainly due to the removal of the Earwing grant, which was approximately 50k, and a significant reduction in the pension grant, again in the region of around 150k. These changes, which were communicated after the budget was set, partially offset the expenditure underspend, bringing in the overall projected underspend at 27,000. Turning to table 2, which is the direct employee cost, full-time costs are showing an overspend of 357,000, primarily because the actual establishment has exceeded 300, reaching 310 by the end of July. This is offset by underspend in support and on-call, resulting in a net underspend of 6k. And the underspend that's reported under support staff, posts are starting to be recruited to those, so that underspend may change throughout the year. If I can now just take you to the chart 1, which is the bank chart, and it looks at the bank costs. The bank costs are currently on track with the budget that we've set, but we anticipate fluctuations throughout the year, which will impact our final outcome position. This, for me, is probably one of the high risk areas that will probably have a direct impact on our outcome. Now, moving on to table 3, non-employee costs. The key variance areas, you see that there's additional treasury income, which has resulted in a positive overall variance. And taking this into account with the employee costs and the other areas, it's resulted in a slight underspend of 27k. Moving on to the capital programme, there really isn't much significant variances to report because it's quite early in the year. But Table 7 outlines the key capital projects that are currently underway. The last bit I just wanted to touch on, internally we carry out our monitoring reports and we have actually just finished completing the August report. And the August report is actually now showing a slight overspend of 8K, and that's the current position. So even though in July we were showing an underspend of 27K, it's now currently showing an overspend of 8K, and that was because there was a movement in bank which was slightly higher than what we had projected. And again, it kind of stresses the point, the volatility of it. The good news overall is that we expect to be hovering around the break-even point throughout the year, unless there are significant changes that we weren't aware of, i.e. additional income or additional costs that we might incur that weren't initially budgeted. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for us from that report? Mariah?
Go first.
Tracy and Rob.
Thank you, Chair. One of the questions I have, Asif, is around the, I think it's page 21 that looks at the non-employee costs, and I think you itemise the various headlines, the premises, supplies and services. Is there anything that you can show us that can actually project that on a month-by-month basis over a financial year period?
It all depends on what we're kind of projecting. So there'll be some costs that we're aware of, so we can kind of project and plan for it, and some costs that happen throughout the year. I guess we could probably do some form of a graph to kind of say this is what the budget looks like.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, but the difficulty with this is it includes a multitude of items. So similar to with the bank, right, there's only one item that you're kind of reporting on. With supplies and services, you've got a number of items in there, such as software and premises costs, such as maintenance, utilities, and so forth. And they're all going to be quite volatile in terms of when we're going to incur the expenditure. So how accurate it will be on by month would be quite difficult. And I would probably say focus more on the outturn. So if we're then trying to say that actually it's going to overspend or underspend, that's where we should be getting the information from. Because it's the end position that we're really interested in, how it kind of fluctuates throughout the year. As long as it's within the budget, I'm not too concerned by it. I just think I don't want to promise something that might just be too problematic to produce because of the volatility in the budget and the different elements in it.
I hear you. I guess what my thinking is, if I may, Chair, is understanding the pinch points really for the various headlines on a month-by-month basis, in line with your agency costs and also in line with the permanent staff costs. Because I know that there has been quite a lot of conversation about, the pressure that is around agency costs and how that relates to other on costs, and that's what I would like to see.
Yes.
So you're the expert, so however you think that's best replicated. Then.
Exactly. It's something that I need to look into, and I'll ensure that I'll come back to you with a proposition.
Thank you, that's it. Thank you.
I just say, Councillor Priestley, I did raise this myself with ASIC, just to understand better what is included in supplies and services. And it is a vast range of things, and I understand exactly what ASIC says about the difficulty of forecasting. A lot of those would be fluctuating items depending on current need. So I agree, it's the outturn, projected outturn, that matters, but I'm sure ASIC will come back with something for you. Tracy.
Thank you. I thought this format was very clear, so thank you for that. It's just a very minor question. I was wondering what staff came under the sessional category on table 2.
Yes, so this, on my head, I think it's to do with biker down in certain fighter courses, so they're based on as and when we run fighter courses and provided an hourly rate. Again, it's not a significant element.
Thank you.
And Rob.
Yeah, just to say, they mentioned along the lines that the format I think is really good. Thank you very much. One question on page 6, which is on the funding. Note that we look like we're going to have a shortfall of approximately 0.2. Against all the other things, it looks very small. But is that where we believe we'll be, or is that where we're modelling we'll be?
Current projections show that we are going to have a shortfall of 200k, and that's because we've had our pension funding has been confirmed and removal of area grant has been confirmed. but I'm quite confident that we've got enough treasury income that's coming in to offset it. Obviously, for future years, this doesn't reflect what our funding going to be for next year and the year beyond, because we've got to wait for the outcome of the fair funding review. And that's what we're waiting on. We do have thinkings of what it may or may not look like, but it's more finger in the air. We're kind of waiting for clear communication from the government in terms of how that's going to look and what impact that's going to be. But in the background, Mark and I, between one and a different scenario, Mark might want to just add more to it.
Yeah, so just to add to the in-year part, so the bits that as it's highlighted are the bits we're a bit certain about. The only other bit that will come up, which we're not signed on yet, is there's a reconciliation later in the year between estimated business rates and actual business rates collection, which could be a plus or a minus. So that may change later in the year, but we've got no way of forecasting that at the moment.
Just for reference, to understand it, through the chairman, what point were the decisions of the funding taken which influenced this, or which calendar year?
So the funding decisions were made about a week or two after we set the budget, unfortunately. So the airwave grant was being reduced by 25% a year for 4 years, but they accelerated that, so that now disappeared completely. The pension grant, there is a significant bit of work that was being done by the Home Office, as was now CLG, just to look into kind of what's caused some of the big swings in Excel data, the data, and it's changed it for a lot of authorities. So they're trying to understand that a bit better. So we're putting pressure on to make sure our allocation for next year is as good as possible.
Yeah, do we have any more questions for Steve? Okay, thanks. We'll move on then to item 7 on the agenda. Oh, sorry, there's the recommendation. We'll accept the report. Happy with that? All agree? Okay. And moving on, Mark, if you can talk us through fair funding review response.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. So this paper details the services response to the Fair Funding Review 2.0 consultation paper. Unhelpfully, there were no detailed figures published within the consultation itself. So we therefore provide to model the potential impact, but significant uncertainty remains. So if you look at Appendix 1 of the report, which is on page 29 of the appendix, you can see the graph there where we try to illustrate the impact on reserves. And we've used 2 models that have been independently produced for the service. And you can see that there is significant difference between the 2, but just highlights some of the uncertainties and some of the assumptions that have to be made to produce those. But nevertheless, both show that we're in a worse position than the MTFP that was approved in February. There's 2 main reasons for this. The first one is that the overall share of fire and rescue services funding relative to other services is decreasing. So while it's understandable that there are significant pressures in adults and children's social care, for example, and the pressure there is increasing, fire and rescue services are based more on risk rather than demand. And actually the risk within our community hasn't changed. In fact, it's probably increasing. So to be faced with a decreasing funding situation is counterintuitive to that. The other issue we're faced with is that your funding need is then reduced based on a notional council tax amount. So what is charged on average rather than what we actually charge. So that penalises us massively to the tune of almost £1 million in year 1. And we're effectively penalised for taking some prudent spending decisions in the past. So while the response to the consultation is very technical, the overall thrust of our response, which is based heavily on the National Fire Chiefs Council's response, is to ensure that fire and rescue service funding is protected over the spending review period. Given that the budget date announced recently has been set for late November, it's unlikely that we'll get provisional figures until late December. And we'll obviously update members as and when we have those. But in the meantime, I'm happy to take on questions.
Councillor Stutchbury, anyone?
Yeah, but just thank you for the report. You refer to prudent decisions. Be useful to the providers when those prudent decisions are taken, which are the £1 million, which, unless I misheard you, were saying that that we'd get £1 million less because of prudent decision. I presume that's the rate of council tax that we levied, which would be through the decisions. And could we perhaps have an understanding where they are? And you also said quite rightly that it's all up in the air, and many of the things we don't know. I always think titles of these things are probably misleading, where it says fair funding review. I mean, that's probably a misleading title, isn't it? So, and we might not consider it fair or funding, but it is something we need to consider and understand quite where those lines came of, meant that we're now £1 million or would be £1 million worse off. Just to see that we kind of know about the decisions, but we need to understand the history behind those to make sure we don't repeat those decisions. This is the way that funding is going to be allocated in the future.
Madam Chairman.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
It's okay to respond to.
Yeah, fine, you go.
Yeah, certainly.
Sorry, I was just trying.
Yeah, so yeah, fair is a subjective term. So those that are winning from it would be like, yeah, this is really fair. We've been kind of in a deficit for ages. Those that lose will be like, this is really unfair. We're losing loads of money. So there are winners and losers. The council tax thing, it's a kind of an impact of every decision of every single year going forwards. We've been really kind of penalised by having strict percentage terms limits in previous years. So when you're below the average and it's a percentage increase, you're getting further and further away from the others. In more recent years, we have had the £5 flexibility and we've taken that. But the assumed notional average in their calculation is £92 as an average for our authority. As at 25-26, we were £84.46. So effectively that difference multiplied by the number of council tax payers we've got and the equivalent, it reduces our funding allocation. So it's really, really quite significant. So one of the things we put in the consultation is if you are going to take that approach, we need to have the ability to get to that notional average pretty quickly, because we're going to get penalised every single year. So yeah, it's not an impact of one decision in 1 year, it's every single year those decisions we've taken around expenditure and council tax.
Any further questions for Mark on that area? Okay, thank you, Mark, appreciate that. And move on to item A.
I was just saying, the responsible consultation being empty.
We have his note.
Yeah.
This one. Item 8, performance management. Craig.
Good morning. So, yeah, your packs you have in front of you. I'm just to start off by something slightly different to what you've seen in the past. That's basically in line with the new CRMP that was launched in April. These now reflect that. So, the sections, there's 6 sections as opposed to the previous, and they're all based on those our new objectives and enablers. So, there's a bit of a difference in the breakdown. Most of the measures you have in there are the same as before. There is more emphasis on the supporting narrative now with those. Just a bit of background as well on the pack before we look inside it is, while we provide you a pack that I think consists of around just over 40 pages, we do look at performance slightly more in depth on a monthly basis across all of our delivery groups. So we actually produce a pack that goes to our staff and our groups that is now 100 pages long for the KPIs. We just provide you with those, the certain ones that we think are more prudent to come to this level. So just to reassure you, basically, there is more things we look at. With regards to this pack, there's a few highlighted measures on the intro page as opposed to in the pack. And this relates to especially the number of accidental dwelling fire and fatalities we had in the first quarter, which was higher than normal, and our over the border support that we provided. In the past, it's normally been read on over the border services come to us, but in the first quarter, it was the opposite. And that in turn has actually helped us in the costs as well. So we should see some savings made from that. But other than that, that's the pack. I appreciate there's quite a few measures in there, so I'm happy to take any questions really.
Councillor Rams.
Thank you. So obviously the measure that kind of caused me quite a lot of alarm when I looked at it was the fire safety audits performance. And given the context of our previous cause of concern on protection and all the work that went into addressing that, I suppose my question is, are we really confident we haven't taken a step back? And I suppose the bit as well for me that added to that concern is the commentary. because I take this challenge and spirit it's intended. But that commentary was very reflective of our initial response when we got the protection cause for concern, which is, oh, it's all a bit more complex. And I think HMI's quite right challenge is the target is the target. And I think we're in danger of kind of trying to explain an underperformance in a way that I don't think is particularly credible. So can you just give us some confidence that, particularly as we're heading into another inspection window, that we are still in the right place with protection, and that fire safety audits isn't a warning sign that we've taken a step back?
If we invite Simon to comment on that.
Yeah, no,
It says it is an issue I've raised myself.
so the question is a really point one. I think the point around the narrative, we'll take that back because from our monthly performance monitoring, I think we are getting into a better position. It is a stretching target that we set, and there are issues around recruitment and acquisition of skills which are leading to that kind of continued gap, and it's not getting the traction that we needed as quickly as we would like. So that is there. I think in point of the HMI, the good news is that they are confident that we know the issues now, and I think before we perhaps didn't have good sight through good performance monitoring as to why there was that issue with fire safety audits. So when we've had HMI in, actually Catherine's in this week, we'll talk about it this week, she's aware of the recruitment challenges and the skills gaps. I always get frustrated, there's a bit of a lag on these reports because we're actually, we are focusing on this and we're highlighting it because we want to service it at this level, but one of the months in Q2 we actually hit the target. So we are, it's not where it needs to be yet, but we should still go, we think that target's right, and we think we can achieve it. It is challenging, but it's the right thing to do. So sure.
I'll just jump on the back of that. So July, we hit 59, August we hit 68. So that then brought us into the green. Also, as I mentioned earlier, that we measure a lot of other things in our local pack, and 5 of the other measures support the influence of what happens to those audits. So it's the other things that come in that disrupt those audit numbers. So they're kept on a monthly audit. I appreciate it probably doesn't represent that very well in the quarterly pack, which we'll try and improve the next time. But yeah, we are on the right path.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, John, you
I'd just suggest, just to reinforce that, perhaps we bring something back to members just to show kind of the breadth of the work of protection, just so that you can see it in the context of those audits against everything else might be helpful.
it's good to understand that there is an improving element to this, notwithstanding the training lag and the recruitment issues in that area. So, yes, I think let's have as much information as we can. Right, with version. Any more questions on the performance management, Tracy?
Thank you. Just looking at the deliberate fires, I'm just wondering what the fire service can actually do in terms of this data. It says things about prevention to consider monitoring opportunities for interventions, but these are presumably criminal activities and not something that we can influence in the first instance.
Yeah, I'll take it. So it depends on the state of the fire, I guess. We always see a rise when the heat gets hotter and it gets drier. We do see a rise. Some of those are tend to be small fires that are just like in the woods or whatever. Then they can get bigger. So it's the deliberate primary fires that would concern us more than the secondary ones. The primary ones tend to be anything that's pretty much these smoke explains insurable, and a lot of that. It does increase in that. We do work with the police on a regular basis. So we work with them. They get a monthly report from us. Likewise, they feed back to us. We have a fire status group, which we basically, if we're aware of anyone that shows tendencies to light fires, we have a prevention team that actually go and work with them. And on that period, there is also, we look for the trends on where, location, time, all that sort of thing. So one of the things that's seen the rise is generally cars and mopeds and bikes. So that's something that you're right, there is a limited amount we can do, but what we do well, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
I'll come to you in a moment. Thank you, Councillor Stutchwell.
Yeah, just 2 questions, and Chair. The first one, I note it's useful to see the graph on the on-floor availabilities, which points out where people were and where they were available on that page, and it's useful just to read it. It's a June response, so it's quite recent, where you can see Olney was massively available, Princely Fitzborough was massively available, Washington, Bolton, Buckingham, West Ashton, and it goes down, and it's quite useful to see who was available. And also we have to compliment you and the team for the work you're doing on promoting recruiting on call, which has been quite notable, which I think we've all seen in our areas, and I think that's important that we as members promote that, the on call. So I'm just noting that, it's just interesting for background information, but I would seek a bit of understanding. I thank Simon for his question around safety. I think it was a good question. Where did we land that report? Where was that report landed in a time? I know Simon said these reports are quite behind, but what period was that information landed which generated those concerns? And Simon said that we've moved on quite a lot from then. So that the report really is an actual in a time base, not where we are today. And I think we need to understand that, because I think Simon was right to raise the issue, and I think we need to understand where we are today more in a bit more coaching. Is there to be a bit more information to reassure us, because those points about fire safety are key, and I think it's a good question.
Yeah, again, just that point around kind of the lag, I think, being reassured that on a monthly basis, we have performance monitoring that's chaired by the chief, and we bring through that data and see it live. But notwithstanding that there is that lag when it gets to the authority, I know the authorities to perhaps a review of the timescales to try and line those up a little bit better. So perhaps we can do that into next year to get those better aligned. So you're getting the quarterly information closer to the end of that quarter is what we'd like to get to.
And lastly, I understood you said that, which I thought was a good statement, that since we've improved our as authority, our conditions and the way we were under review, that I think a little bit more information in future about how they understand that we understand the issues that we're doing. I think that was a really important statement. I think a little bit about that at some point would be really good, because we have to understand it as members, and I'm sure you understand it fully as an officer of the fire authority, and there's a difference in the way that we understand things.
Okay. Any more you want?
Well, again, if members would like it, I'm sure we could run some form of workshop where we could go through performance monitoring, so that would help go through it more detail.
So that's something members would like to do.
Yeah.
Time, but we can look into that. Thank you. Next on my list is Councillor Hussain.
Yeah, just on my lateness, I do apologise to you. One is, it was reported in the media yesterday. It's following a question from a colleague here about what is kind of the bottom level, what is the lowest we can get to, that we are under control of. So there was 3 deaths in the whole year. And I'm just wondering, and they were kind of and ahhing about that, which is with a population of what, 180,000, Milton Keynes, something like that, 70,000 Vale District girls that I know of. Buckinghamshire is 500,000. So if you cover the whole of Buckinghamshire, it's 500,000 plus. They include Milton Keynes,
Just over 800.
800,000. 3 deaths in a whole year. Fire. I don't know how low you can go. My other point is I was quite. There used to be, when I was at the mosque, we used to come with prevention, especially residential fires. There was a lot of take up on visits and the fire warnings which were given out. Is there still funding for that? Because I think that did a lot of good in 2 ways. One, in PR terms, in making sure the community is aware of you and how you can help, and also in prevention terms for the community.
I'll take both those. So the first one about the 5 fatalities, I appreciate it's in how low we can go. What we do is we monitor whether compared to our performance in the usual year.
Yeah.
Usually we only see about 2 in a financial year. We had 3 in the first quarter, so that's kind of why we raised it as a highlight. As a if you compare us nationally, we normally sit very, very well when it comes to fatalities and serious injuries and fires. Again, that might be something we could bring in if that's what you wanted to. There is a much bigger lag on that because we have to wait for the national data, and that is now out. But that's something we could show you and share with you as maybe an add-on to the next performance pack. The second part about the prevention, one of the measures in here is about some of the prevention work we do and the amount of visits we do and how we do it and how we aim it at the high risk. The funding is all part of one fund, so it's not, I don't believe, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, we don't get any additional funding to do that. It's just part of the overall funding we get, but that is something that is still one of our top priorities about preventing the fires and doing those visits, and that's both in the home and in the commercial sense.
Yeah.
So, and we do a lot of work to target those that are most vulnerable to fire.
Anything to add to that?
No, well, I think Craig's covered it really well. Just that reassurance of prevention is an absolute core priority of what we do, as Craig said, in the home and
No, I'm just saying, I felt it was only an hour of your time, and it's still an hour with 3 or 4 officers and a five piece unit time. But I thought you reached almost 2,000 people and their families, and it was a good way. Plus, you were giving out free fire things and saying, we'll come and inspect them here. You don't know how to fit them.
So we reach nearly 5,000 homes a year that we go to. And they generally are those that are either in the most lowest income areas, or the elderly tend to be the
Well,
ones.
I think we should timetable again the 2 Islamic centres, one Hampshire, one Southall, because you'll hit 2,000 people in one hit.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hall.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Just firstly, a piece of trivia. Edward the Black Prince, who died in 1376, from whence Prince's Risborough takes its name, was in fact a prince, not a princess. So if we could, so if we could make sure that that is accurate in future reports, because local people find that quite annoying. So page 6618 on the over the border mobilisations. Disappointing to see that there's virtually no change on the 5-year average in this year at 153. I would have expected that to come down, and also looking at the table below, Aylesbury stands out. I understand why Beaconsfield and Gerrards Cross have so many incidents, because we don't have a station down there because of Slough and Langley, but Aylesbury is hardly in the middle of nowhere, and it's surrounded by an estate of fire stations, and you know, our argument has been in the past that we wanted to go from 12 whole-time pumps to possibly 13 or 14 once we have the staff available, because I just find over the border, and presumably they're coming from Oxfordshire, for Aylesbury, that's pushing it a little bit. It's not, you know, I think that needs to be challenged and pushed back by the authority.
Invite Simon, but yeah, my own view on that, for what it's worth, is I think increasingly we have to think in terms of response across Thames Valley. That's how we're set up on a response point of view, and I think this is the way things are moving. But
I'll take it if that's essentially. So weirdly, I see it slightly differently. So I see the fact that it's similar, that just tells us it is about geography and not availability. So when it comes to Aylesbury, one you can think about to the left in Tame and Hadden, there's also a giant bit on the right that sticks out really weirdly, and there's quite a lot of number of risks there that we do get Hertfordshire coming to us and spots quite a bit from there as well. We do get it from Tame as well. Some of the numbers we get, and I'm just talking about Aylesbury now, is a lot of incidents rely on the PGA, pre-term attendance. So if you have a house fire, for example, with nobody reported, that's 2 pumps that go out straight away. If you get another incident straight away after that, the nearest appliance would be Tame. So they'll either come in to support that, or they'll come in as a standby. At the moment, we don't influence who does that. It is purely the quickest is the quickest. There have been talks in the past about how we could potentially mitigate that with control, but then that adds a lot of complexity to control rather than them just doing quickest. Again, to reassure you, while it looks like it's the same, the costs have gone down dramatically though. So in the first quarter alone, the cost of our over the border mobilisations reduced by £50,000, which is massive for us. So while they might be coming in, the time they're spending in is a lot less. So we're getting them back, and a lot of the times it could be as simple as if you had like a fire at State Medical Hospital, for example, or expected, that might have a PGA of 6 appliances, for example. So you call those in, the first one gets there within 5 minutes, so it's a false alarm, you return those for 5, but we still have to pay that nominal fee to those 5 that are on the way. So there's always going to be exceptions like that. We've modelled lots, and we've got reports, and we can share with you those reports on how that works, the mapping. If we put roaming pumps in, what difference it would make. If we added another 20 whole time pumps to all our whole time stations, what difference it would make, and it's very minimal because it is purely about geography at this point. And the fact we have all our whole time appliances available shows that. We also, you'll see on when we get to the on-call review and stuff, you'll see the impact of having those on-call appliances to the over the border, and that's nominal as well. I hope that covers it.
Thank you, Craig. Good response. Any further questions for Craig? Ryan?
I think I want to echo what councillors Touchbury and councillor Hussain said about 2 questions ago, looking at the format of what's been presented to us. I have to say, when I first read it, because you have to forgive me, this is my second time of seeing these reports, and I find myself trying to make sense of what it means in terms of figures, but also in terms of the understory, the story that reports those figures. I'm really glad that Chairman has, put the question out that whether we want a workshop to privately sit with yourselves to look through how we make up the feedback, because actually, from my point of view, I find myself wondering, okay, we've got the figures, we've got the RAG rating, we've got some of the story behind it, but actually I find myself thinking, what are the mitigation actions? What is actually being done to support some of those areas? So, for example, around bank shifts. So, forgive me, that's the way I tend to see things, but I'm sure we can have a conversation about that offline.
I'm going very quickly on that. You are saying exactly what Archie says. So her thing is, so what? So that's something that we are really pushing our staff and trying to support them with the narrative that is more about the so what. Initially it was, we need to understand why we're here. Now we're moving towards that so what. So we understand it, but what are you doing and how are we reporting it? So I completely agree, and hopefully we'll get to that point in the very near future.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, Craig. And Councillor McLean has a question.
Thank you, Chair. So apologies for not being there. I'd probably, if I'd kept going, I'd have probably arrived about 3 minutes ago. On page 54, as page 6 of the report, in the first narrative block, it says prison fires have been excluded from these numbers. I understand why they're excluded, because obviously most of them would be deliberate. But is there a trend either way going? There's been more fires or less fires in prison? Because last year we had reported there are actually less fires. Is that still the case?
As of Q1, it looked okay, but I happen to know Q2 figures now, and unfortunately Q2 has seen a rise. We're currently looking into that now. A lot of the prison fires are dependent on the prisoners and the reason they're in there. So if you get an arsonist in a prison, regardless what you do, the prison fires go up. There was a second one moved into a said prison recently, and then we saw a spike. The work we're doing in the prisons now is more than we've ever done. So we provide monthly reports, we provide instant reports to the prison chair, that then they use that as evidence to support extra sentencing and stuff for those prisoners. We're even looking at level of details of the lighters that we provide them and the vapes that they get. So there's certain different vapes they can use. So yes, there's been Q1 would have looked great if I'd shown you it. Q2 is looking like it, and there's a spike, but we're currently working with them on.
Okay, thank you for that, Craig. I've got a couple of other points of questions, Chair, if I can continue.
Why not? Yeah, do so.
Thank you very much. On page 67, page 19 of the report, we've got the bottom right, the resource in a coded form. I have actually no idea which appliance is where, whereas we talk about in other parts of the report, station grounds. It would be helpful, I think, if we knew where those pumps were actually located. Yeah, I think that would give a better view to the lay people. And then the last point is on page 71, I think it is, in the actual versus establishment, talks about the vacancies. At the People's Awards I attended, I met a gentleman who'd actually joined the fire service from Milton Keynes Council as a business continuity officer. Just wondering, is that we're adding a second business continuity person, or does that person not stay very long with the fire service?
I'll take both those questions. So the first one, page 67, I can only apologise. Those call signs shouldn't be in there. That should be the names. So that is an admin error from our point of view. We'll get that corrected before it goes to the fire authority.
Thank you.
With regards to the business continuity, he's still with us. And we're currently recruiting for someone to support that person as well. So I don't think that's where the mix-up has come. But yeah, they're both. He's still with us, and there's another job advert out for an additional support.
Oh, I'd hope that was the answer you were going to give, Craig. So thank you very much for confirming that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions on that? Councillor Stutchburn.
But just on the point about second engines to fire, there was only point that Craig made about geography, Chair, was very relevant. You come down to top of the county and the bottom of the county, the narrowing of the county boundaries does mean that for safety reasons, second engine may be out of county when it comes to the fire, because that's a safety issue. I know in my own area, in Buckingham, quite often our engines will overlap with Northamptonshire and sometimes with Oxfordshire and vice versa, and Milton Keynes. I think we have to make sure that when we discuss these things, we talk about it as a safety response. And I think you did it well, because it's important that we know why that engine's got there first and why the second one's there, because its availability could turn out, and it would always be that, unless I'm incorrect, the next engine available in the Thames Valley strike area, which is available, will be there. The second engine, if that's the case, is that correct? It's not.
The only thing I would correct you on is it's not the Thames Valley, it's all fire rescue services.
Yes, yeah.
So regardless of where it is, we have set times for how long we get there.
I was taking my leave from the chair at Thames Valley, that's all.
Yeah. But that's, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Any further questions for Craig on this report? No, thank you, Craig. It's really interesting report, and we've noted the various points we've made that further. I think, from my point of view, if there is some way of making the data more up to date, appreciate the pressures that puts on you to deliver it, but clearly it would be more helpful, even if we had the report in its current format, but some more current data added as just an addendum to the report.
We should do that. There's
something for you to.
Yeah, there's two challenges. Well, there's the challenges that it has to go through governance. That's the first challenge. So getting that through to the point where it's signed off here is at one point spent, especially as this goes into the public eye. So we have to be a bit careful. On the opposite side of that, we do have some software that we use to look at our performance. There is the potential that we could give access to members to that at a certain level in the future. So you could have you could see live data, and that might be, it's something we'll raise if we're going to have that performance meeting. We'd look at it then and discuss it there. I think.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That concludes business for the day, other than to agree date of next meeting, which is scheduled for Wednesday, the 12th of November. Thank you all for your. First of all, can we just agree that the report subject to those requests and corrections is submitted to the full authority meeting in Great. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll see you on the 12th of November.
Thank you, everyone.
Right.